this computer. Let's see how much, maybe that'll take up too much room, but we'll try it. All right. Hopefully it records everything I want it to. Starting you out with Blackboard. That's not Blackboard. Just went. Try to get rid of my board that's up here. Too many controls that pop up. All right, so a couple things on Blackboard. If you looked at the announcements for this week, it talked about when all the reviews are and making sure you're signed up for your final. That's all we have left. So it's exciting to be this place. Under our classroom, so our classroom is where you spent most of the whole semester finding all your sections. There's midterm and final reviews. This is the final review that we'll be doing in class, and the answer key is also available. So it's a bit findable there. This is what the review looks like. It's going to look very similar to the test. I will try to give you hints and changes and things that might be a little different from the test, but most of it's pretty much the same. So problem number 1, this is only chapter 3. It's only the newest material. Problem number 1 asks us to write the data into ordered pairs. All they want you to do is bring together, with parentheses around it, the first number, comma, the second number. That's all they want for that one. We'll do it for each piece of data. So this one will be with parentheses around it, 31, comma, 125. And the last one will be 65, comma, 144. You will have more data points. They're not going to just do 3. This was to consolidate it to fit it into the review. So you may have 10 or so. And then they do ask you to graph them on a coordinate grid. It's going to be an estimate. So the coordinate grid will be provided for you. And you'll go over 25, up 121, and put a little dot there. As long as it's in the right ballpark, you're going to be good. Questions on number 1? It will look like a scatter plot. Probably it's not going to be a straight line. Shouldn't be. Might be roughly a line, but probably not a straight line. A little closer to me, so I have trouble hearing. All right. As I've gone through this in my other couple sections, we've realized there's a lot like number 2. There's like 4 or 5 problems that are similar to number 2. So it says a car rental company charges a flat rate of $99.99 plus 12 cents per mile. Write an equation that expresses the cost y for having driven it X miles. So my cost is y. We often use C, but this time they asked me to use y equals. What is my flat rate? How much am I charged regardless of how far I drive?
99.
Yep,
99.
99.99. Then we're going to add to that the charge per mile. How do I represent that I'm being charged 12 cents per mile? How do I put that into this equation? Plus what?
0.12x.
Yes, perfect. 0.12x. It has to be times the x because we don't. That's changing. That's my variable quantity. My cost y is going to depend on how many miles I go. So that's 2a. Questions on 2a?
I have a quick question.
Yep.
So if I wrote it y equals 0.12x plus the 99,
Perfect.
would that still be correct?
It's absolutely perfect. Yeah. And some of it has to do with how you see it. It's kind of funny because if I'm doing an algebraic equation, I always put my x first. In a real world problem, my brain changes things and sees it as the flat rate first. But yes, absolutely. Addition is commutative. You can change your order, so it doesn't matter which order you do it in.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right. Part B says, how much will it cost to go 100 miles? So what we're going to do is replace x with 100. So into your calculator, you'll type in 99.99 plus 0.12 times 100. So take a second and do that, and I'm going to grab my drink real quick while you do that. Anyone get an answer yet?
111.99.
And I'm hearing it from everybody, 111.99. It is starting to lag, so in a second I'll turn off my camera.
It's gonna be 1.9.
Yes, 0.99. Any questions? It's gonna lag a second while I turn off my camera, but I'm gonna turn it off because I think that'll make it better. Hopefully. Always freezes it when I turn it off. Yesterday I had to actually log off and log back in. If we get to that point, we'll do that, but being morning, it should be better. All right, number 3 is very similar. There is a typo in number 3. Let's talk about that first. I thought I had it fixed and I did not. In part A, this should say the $10 per game option, because there is no $13 per game option. I apologize for that typo. 3A and B are going to look just like 2A. You're writing equations again. So in the first one, it says vendors at one major league ballpark can choose one of 2 pay structures. So the first one for part A is a $10 flat pay and then $12 per hot dog. That's gonna be my first equation, very similar to 2A. 3B says there's no base pay for the other option, but it's 22 cents per hot dog. And I'm gonna scroll down to the bottom where there's some blank space and do these, just so we have some room. So 3A says the cost was, what was my flat rate in 3A?
$10.
$10.
$10, perfect. Plus, how much am I earning per hot dog?
12 cents.
Yep, and I'll times that times the number of hot dogs. Again, you can switch the order just like before. You could do the 0.12x plus 10. That's fine too. Questions on 3A? 3B does not have a flat fee, so it's just going to be y equals what? How much is it per hot dog?
0.22x.
Right, perfect. We don't need to have a plus anything. If you put plus 0, that's fine. That's not going to hurt anything. Questions on 3B? You see how similar it is to 2A. 3C is where things get a little different. This was actually the last section we did, section 310. And what we have here is that I have 10 plus 0.12x equals y and 0.22x equals y. If they both equal y, then it's safe to say they equal each other. So I take the first one, the 10 plus 0.12x, and I set it equal to, I don't add it to. The biggest mistake here is people want to add them together. I set it equal to the other one, which is 0.22x. Then take a minute and pat yourself on the back for getting the right equation before we try to solve it. Then look back at this equation as a brand new equation that we have to solve. That goes back to about the middle of chapter 3, where we learned how to solve equations. Probably something you've seen somewhere before in your past. When you're solving equations, the first step is to get the x's together on one side. Doesn't matter which side, but it's easier in this case to move my 0.12x over to the right side. How do I move it?
Subtract it on both ends.
Yep, perfect.
Does it matter if we wrote it the opposite way?
No, if you have the 0.22x equals the 10 plus yeah, no, that's fine. Once you move the 12 cents over, you're left with 10 on one side. And then we have to do the arithmetic on, in my case, on the right side. What's 22 cents minus 10 cents?
It's gonna be 10. 22 minus 10. It's gonna be 12.
I think it's 10. So if I
Oh,
have
22. Oh, yeah, it's 10, yes. So
okay. If I have 22 cents and I lose 12 cents, I now have 10 cents. Now I'm down to a
Yes.
one-step equation. What is my last step required to solve this? That 0.10 is smashed up against the x. That means times. How do I
So
Divide it on
times?
both. Divide it.
Divide by 0.10. And what do I get?
100.
Yep, perfect. So at 100 hot dogs, both plans will cost the same amount of money. And you could plug it in and figure out how much. You could take 100 times 0.22. It's going to be $22. Same thing would happen if you put it in the first equation. While I'm at the back of this, I just want to show you that this is what you will see on the back of your test. It's the steps on how to do the line of best fit. In addition, there will also be a little blurb about how to get the R back, because when you go to the testing center, they do erase your calculator, the R will disappear. So there's a little blurb in addition to this that tells you how to get the R to come back. The nice thing is when they clear your calculator, it clears out all your lists. So you don't have to actually clear the list yourself. If you had stuff typed in there, it'll be gone, which is kind of cool. All right, questions on number 3. And again, I apologize for this.
How did we get the 10? So how we end up with the 10 equals to 0.10x?
Okay, so which part are you confused about, the 10 or the 0.10?
The 0.10.
Okay, that was the 22 cents minus 12 cents. 0.22 minus 0.12 is 0.10 or 0.1. Your calculator may not say 0.10. It may say 0.1, and that's fine.
Okay, I'll get it.
Yeah. When I'm doing it in my head, I'm thinking in terms of money, so I'm thinking 10 cents. But if I put it in my calculator will give me 0.1, not 0.10. Same thing. So if you took 10 divided by 0.1, you'll still get 100. Does that make better sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I will use a word of caution. I had one student one time who memorized the review so well that he put some of those answers down on the test. So be careful. Number 4 is line of best fit. You'll have more than 4 data points because 4 data points is not a lot. You'll have a longer list, but it's the same steps. This is the one where the steps are on the back of the test. And I'm going to go into my calculator and hopefully it turns on nicely for me. I always find it so amusing that it's an online calculator, but I have to turn it on and it struggles. There we go, struggles to turn on. So when you're on your main screen, everything we want to do that is involved with statistics is to the left of the gray arrows. It's a button that says stat, S-T-A-T. So if I push the stat button, it gives me everything in the world in statistics that I need to know how to do. The first thing I have to do is edit because I have to type in my lists. And you'll see I actually have some stuff in here. So I'm going to arrow over, highlight it, clear, enter, and that clears out the list. Like I said, I believe when they reset your calculator, it will clear all these lists for you. It kind of puts it back to factory settings, which is kind of nice. L1 is going to be the age. So I'm going to type in 18 and then hit enter. Then I'm going to type 21 and then hit enter. 32 and then hit enter. 65 and then hit enter. And again, you'll have more points. It's not going to be just 4. 4 is not statistically significant. Arrow over and then type in the distance. So 5.8, enter. 5.5, enter. 4.2, enter. 2.5, enter. It's fairly important on this problem that you do check and make sure you type everything in correctly because your calculator will only do what you tell it to do. So if for the first one, instead of 5.8, I typed in 58, my calculator is going to use 58. It doesn't know that I meant 5.8. Good check is to make sure they end at the same level at the bottom. If they're staggered, one of your lists is wrong. I would just clear them out, type them all in again. It's hard to figure out which one's missing. And it's important that they're paired together. 18 has to go with 5.8. 21 has to go with 5.5. You can't change the orders. Any questions on entering the lists? Now I want to do something else in statistics. So I'm going back to the stat button. This time I don't want to edit something. I want to calculate something. And this again is at the back of your test on how to do all these steps. We learned number 1 back in the first before the midterm. The only other thing we know how to do is number 4. That's linear regression. So I'm going to go down to the linear regression, number 4, or I can type in the 4. If you're going on to statistics next semester, you will probably get to do number 5, number 6, number 7 on here. They're just curves that fit the scatter plot. So it's kind of cool. Ours are all lines right now. When you're on the 4, we're going to hit enter. We're going to hit enter a bunch of times. Once calculate is highlighted and then I hit enter, it will actually get my answers for me. And if your R is not showing up, I'll show you how to get that in a second, because your R will not show up when you first do it after they clear it at the testing center. They tell me I have y equals ax plus b. Now, if I can only get the people at TI to turn that a into an m, I'll be very happy. A is your slope. We're used to m being slope, so I wish they did that, but we'll deal with it. Be careful if there's negatives, they're hard to see, especially if you've got bifocals like I do. The a is negative, the slope is negative in this case. They did tell me to round to 3 decimal places, so the first thing I'm going to write is y equals negative 0.068x. I'm going to come back here and write that. Y equals negative 0.068x plus whatever it told me the y-intercept was. That letter actually matches. We're used to b for the y-intercept. My b is 6.829 when I round it correctly. 6.829. Faces are kind of getting right where I'm writing. So once you have an equation, they could ask you all kinds of questions. They could say, how far could a 25-year-old go? You'd replace x with 25. Or they could tell you someone goes 5.0 miles. How old might they be? You'd replace y with 5.0 and then solve it. So once you have an equation, you can do all the things we've ever done with equations. You could graph it. It'd be an ugly graph, but you could graph it. Part B then asks for the correlation coefficient. And like I said, once you go to the testing center and they clear this out, it is not going to show up. There's a blurb at the back of the test that says how to bring it back. We want to get into the catalog. On this calculator, catalog is above the 0 button. On mine, it's blue. Depending on your form, it may be different, but above my 0 in blue, it says catalog. So I hit second 0, and that brings my catalog up. What the catalog is it's every built-in function that your calculator has. This is why the calculator costs over $100, because there are a lot of functions. We want to scroll down to diagnostic. It has to do with testing. And we're going to go diagnostic on. So go to diagnostic on. Then hit enter. And your calculator says diagnostic on. If you hit enter again, it says done. It has done something. We don't know what it's done, but it's done something. Questions so far?
Wait, are you able to do that again?
So hit second 0 to get into the catalog. And then scroll down to diagnostic. So I'm going to use my keyboard, it's a little bit faster. And again, that's what it tells you on the test how to find this. So like I said, once they erase your memory, it'll be done. Now with a little arrow next to diagnostic on, I hit enter, enter. It says done. It did whatever it did. Now I go back to my statistics menu, that stat button. Arrow over to calculate. And go down to number 4 and then hit enter a bunch of times. And this time when you do it, your R will show up. To me, I could easily miss that negative sign. It says R equals negative 0.981. So make sure you have the negative 0.981. As a really quick check, the R sign matches the slope sign. So if your slope is negative, your R will be negative. And then I hear a question coming.
Every time I get there, it comes up with like this number 1 and 2, and then it says quit and go to.
So do your second 0 again. Are you seeing that?
All right, so it says second 0, yeah. And then it said go to diagnostic.
Yeah, so you first saw your catalog looks like this.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we scroll all the way down to diagnostic. Diagnostic on, hit enter. Does your screen look like this? Does it say just diagnostic on?
Yeah.
Okay, then you hit enter and it should say done.
It says done.
Okay, so we're good. So go to the stat one. Did you type in the lists when we did the edit part? So let's double check that. Let's do the edit. Your lists look like mine?
18, 21, 32, 65, 5.8, 5.5, 4.2, 2.5.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So let's go stat and then arrow over to calc. Go down to number 4. And we don't really change anything here as long as you look good. Does it say L1, L2? So the X list is L1, Y list is L2.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't do anything else here. Once it's highlighted on calculate, you should be able to hit enter and it should give you all of this garbage.
I don't know if maybe I'm doing something wrong, but it's like,
You got an error. All right.
yeah, like,
Hang out for a minute afterwards and we'll look at it.
all right.
So since I'm recording it, I don't want to keep recording that part, but we'll look at it as soon as we're done. As soon as I stop recording, we can look at it. All right.
All right.
So the correlation coefficient, if it's close to 1 or -1, it means it's a good fit. So is this a good fit?
Yeah.
Yep, it's a good
What?
fit.
No,
Good
no.
fit. Yeah, it is because it's close to -1. 1 or -1, both are okay. The cat hair on my screen is bugging me. Oh, well. Questions on number 4. You could use your calculator to do number 5. I'm going to walk you through it by hand first, and I'm going to show you what it looks like to do it in your calculator because it's actually kind of cool. Part A in 5 says, why is this a line? Why is this a straight line? I'm going to mute somebody because I think I'm not going. You can unmute if you have a question. Usually if I mute everybody, it works. So why is it a line? Well, look at what's happening here. So we've got the number of people in the group goes from 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. It's going up by 2 each time. The cost is going from 35 to 55 to 75 to 95 to 115. So as my group increases by 2 people, my cost is increasing by what? How many dollars?
20.
20. So from 35 to
No.
55 is 20. From 55 to 75 is 20. From 75 to 95 is 20. So for part A, you can either say it's linear because for every 2 people, the cost goes up by 20 each time. Or you might even simplify that and get your slope. So the slope is kind of fun because that's what we were just talking about. There is the slope. We just said it's going up by $20 for every how many people? It goes from 0 to 2. That's an increase of 2 people.
2 people.
So what's my slope? What's 20 divided by 2?
10.
Perfect. So my slope is $10. They also want you to explain what it means. I love this. This is where we differ from a true algebra, or like a pure algebra class, is that we put meaning to this number now. This $10 is the cost per person. So each person that comes is going to cost $10. Questions on that? C asks for the y-intercept. This is a really nice graph because the y-intercept is given. When the number of people in my group is 0, what's my cost?
35.
$35, yep. And what does this mean? This is my initial cost. I don't have much room here. We did consolidate this to make it look smaller, to make it fit on 2 pages, which makes it harder to fill in. Test will be more spread out. It won't be crammed into 2 pages. Now that you have the slope and the y-intercept, you can write the equation of the line. The equation of the line I'm just going to write down here is y equals mx plus b. My m is 10, that's my slope, plus my y-intercept. And again, if you switch the order, it's fine. 35 plus 10x would be fine as well. Questions on part D? Part E is one more little part, because once we have an equation, they can give me x, they can give me y, and I can do all kinds of things with it. In this case, they're giving me x is 15, so I'm going to replace x with 15. I'm going to throw that in my calculator. So I'm going to do 10 times 15 plus 35. And tell me what you get.
185.
Perfect. So if I have 15 people coming, it's going to cost $185. Questions? All right, something I discovered a couple semesters ago, though, is that you can do this with doing the line of best fit. And it's really cool. Something kind of magic happens. So I'm going to go in and edit my list. I'm going to clear out the two lists. Highlight, hit clear, enter, clears it out. And then I'm going to put the number of people in. So I started with 0. Every now and then it does not want to type. 0, 2. It's not liking my keyboard right now. 4, 6, 8. That's as high as we went, right? Yeah. Now we put the cost in the other side. I have a cat laying on my feet. The cost for 0 people we said was $35. Then it went up to 20 each time. And again, it's really important that I put it in correctly because my calculator only can do what I tell it to do. Questions on entering it? Go to your stat, arrow over to calculate and do your linear regression, number 4. It's like you said, you just thought we could do it by hand, but we can make the calculator do it. Look how cool that is. Tells me my slope is 10, my y-intercept's 35, and the cool thing is the r is 1. We've been talking about r being close to 1 or -1, and that means it's a good fit. If r is exactly 1, it's a perfect fit. That means every point is on the line, nothing lies off the line, which I thought was kind of cool. My kids think I'm weird though, so my idea of fun is probably different than most people's. Questions on this problem?
So the D, which they say determine the equation of the line, is it?
The equation line, I wrote it at the bottom. It's y equals 10x plus 35. It's never room to squish it in there. Or 35 plus 10x. Either order is fine.
Okay, and then the y-intercept is going to be 35.
So you can either get that using your calculator or you can get it using the table. Questions through 5. 6 is a proportion. You actually have 2 proportions on the test. You have one that looks like number 6, where you actually have to set up the proportion yourself. And then they have one where it's already set up and they're just asking you to solve it. So that's why there's not a practice of that, because you practice it in number 6, essentially. I know I'm dealing with centimeters and miles. I can either put centimeters on top or miles on top. I just have to be consistent. I'm choosing to put centimeters over miles. It's not dimensional analysis. It's not that stuff we have to get stuff to cancel out. It's just setting up one fraction equals another fraction. If you flip both of them, it's fine. It will work too, miles over centimeters. On a map, the distance from A to B is 10 centimeters. I'm gonna put that on top of my first fraction. That actually gives us a distance of 256 miles. It goes on the bottom of my first fraction. On the same map, unique measured 6 centimeters. So on my second fraction, I have to put centimeters on top, so 6 has to go on top. And I don't know how many miles that is. So that's the setup. That's the hard part of this equation, of this problem, is setting up the proportion. Questions on the setup before we solve it? And I think when we did these, I mentioned my youngest daughter had a different math experience than my older 2. She learned these as butterfly problems, because when you do your cross multiplying, it actually looks like butterfly wings. And I think that's kind of cool. That has stuck with me ever. She told me that like in 5th grade, and I'm like, and she's 19 now. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Cross multiplying means you have no more fractions left. So I do 10 times x to get 10x equals, what is 6 times 256?
1,536.
Do we agree?
Yes.
All right. There's no more fractions left of this set. That's the whole point of cross multiplying. We have one more step to do. I've got the 10 smashed up against the x, which means times. How do I undo times?
Divide.
Divide both sides by what?
10.
10, which will give you 153.6. But the problem does tell me to round to the nearest mile. So the answer I actually want to give is 154 miles. If you leave 153.6, it's only like a point off. Questions on number 6? Seven and 8. most people are happy to have these on here because they're just two fairly quick problems. 7 is solving an equation, 8 is solving an inequality. They both work the same way. Any equation or inequality you solve, your goal is to get the variable by itself. So in number 7, what is the first thing I have to do to get the 2 alone?
Add 2 on both sides.
Add 2 to both sides. Perfect. I don't write small well. I apologize for that. Which gives me 3z equals, what's 19 plus 2?
21.
21. Again, that 3 is smashed up against the z, so that means I have to do what to get rid of it?
Divided by 3.
Yep, and what is 21 divided by 3?
7.
Yep. And on this one, you can either write 7 or z equals 7. The only thing you don't want to write is 7z. I get that occasionally. On 8, we won't have a choice. We have to write the whole thing with a variable out because of the inequality sign. Questions on 7? All right, let's do 8. 8 is the same idea. You want to get the variable. I apologize, my internet's lagging again. There we go. Just doing so well. My daughter's asleep, so I know she's not pulling the Wi-Fi. All right, goal is to get y alone. What do I have to do first?
Add 8 on both sides.
Yep. Add 8 on both sides. Plus 8. Plus 8. I get 2y is greater than, what's 62 plus 8?
70.
70, and I promise it's writing, it's just being very slow. Make sure I did the 70. I can't remember if I wrote that right. It's really weird not being able to see what I write right away. 70, there we go. So now I've got 2y is greater than 70. That 2 is smashed up against the y, so I have to do what to both sides to make the 2 go away?
Divide by 2.
Yep. That leaves me with y is greater than
35.
35.
Perfect. And I have to write it that way. I cannot just write 35 down as my answer because this is an inequality now. Y is greater than 35. There's more than one answer. It's not just 35. It's 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 35.1, 35.01. There's an infinite number of solutions. So that's why I have to write it this way because this tells the reader that it's all values greater than 35. Decimals, fractions, big, huge numbers. Questions? All right. Number 9. Number 9 can either be done algebraically, just like we've done number 2, number 3, several of those equations we had to write with the flat rate stuff, or you might just do it numerically. I have a lot of people who see this one and say, okay, I want my total balance to be 10,500. I'm going to subtract out the deposit right away. So I'm going to take 10,500 minus 2,500. That leaves me with 8,000. I then know that I'm earning $100 a year, so I take 8,000 divided by 100 to figure out how many years it'll be, and it's 80 years. I'm going to show you algebraically because I think that's where most people's mindsets are at this point, but I just want to make you aware that you don't have to do this one algebraically. That's the beauty of this class, is that there's lots of ways to get to the right answer. In my world, algebraically, I'm thinking, okay, I start with 2,500. That's kind of like my flat fee. That doesn't change. That's how much I put in initially. Then I'm earning $100 a year, which when I did this yesterday, I was like, oh, that's not very much. It really is, actually. If you ever look at your savings accounts, you don't earn a lot when you total it up per year. I've got a high yield savings that's going to earn me about $60 a year, which is not a lot. Cat hair in my face, too. And then I want that to be equal to whatever it is Abdul is saving up for, 10,500. So algebraically, that's now an equation we can solve. Oops, and I forgot something. What did I forget?
X.
The X.
With my 100, yes, I apologize for that. Because that's per year. That's my variable one. It changes. So after 1 year, I have 100. After 2 years, I have 200, etc. So I'm trying to get X alone. How do I solve this? What's my first step?
Subtract 2,500 on both sides.
Yep, which will give you 100x equals 8,000. So now you can kind of see where the people who were doing it just numerically got their numbers from. 100 is smashed up against the x. To solve that, I divide both sides by 100. So I get x equals 80 years.
80.
Yeah, it's a long time. I really hope Abdul's not saving up for like a jet ski or something, because by the time he's old enough to pay for it, he probably won't be able to ride it. Maybe he will. If he's 100, it'd be kind of cool. Questions? I'd love to be one of those 100-year-old women ziplining. All right, we're gonna do 11. We'll come back to 10 because I just need a whiteboard. I need a little more space to do number 10. So I think 10 is the hardest one on the test too, actually. 11 is Hodo is a sales representative with a base salary of $100 per month plus 3% commission on all sales. So part A is just writing the equation. Let's get a different color out here so we can keep it separate from all the other stuff we have written here. So they want us to write her equation. So Y equals, what does she make? What is she guaranteed to make per month? If she doesn't make any sales, she's gonna make at least how much?
1,000.
Yep, 1,000. And then what's her commission rate?
It's 30%.
3%.
3%, which would be 0.03. I'm out of room, sorry, X. And that X goes there because it's 3% of whatever she sells. So this is very much like 2A, 3A and B. We have several of these where you have a flat rate and then you have something you're adding on with a variable. Questions on writing the equation? That's the answer for 11A. $11B says, how much will Hodo make if her monthly sales are $30,000? So where does that 30,000 go?
X.
In place of X. I'm trying, it's just not writing. We're gonna replace X with 30,000. I think to save myself trouble next semester, I need to give myself more space just so I can do all the writing on here. So you'll plug into your calculator 1,000 plus 0.03 times 30. What do you get? How much is she gonna make that month?
1,900.
Yep. Seems like a lot of work for a little bit of money. Questions? I'm going to come back and open a whiteboard up to do number 10, and then I'll stop the recording and answer any other questions you have. So number 10, they want us to write the equation, but they give us a point and the slope. The point is -1/6, the slope is 2. So I'm going to stop this share, come back, and share my whiteboard. I'm going to write down the information I had to start with. So I had the point -1/6 and the slope of 2. I'm just pulling that information from the review. When we did this section, I think this was section 3.8, perhaps, we learned the point slope form. We had 3 forms of lines. We had the direct variation, which was the really nice one, y equals mx. There was no intercept, y-intercept or anything. That was the nice form. Then we took it a step further and did slope-intercept, y equals mx plus b. The last form we did was point slope, and the way our book taught point slope was y minus y subscript 0 equals slope times x minus x sub 0. Those subscripts can be a little bit intimidating. They just mean we're going to put numbers in there. It's not the same as y. They want you to show that it's different. So y and y sub 0 are 2 different things. And what's going to happen here is I'm going to replace m with what they told me in the problem it was equal to. So that's going to become a 2. I am going to replace x sub 0 with what they told me it was equal to. And I'm going to replace y sub 0 with what they told me y sub 0 was equal to. I'm going to come back in black and write everything I didn't replace. So I've done a few replacements. I did not replace the y or the minus sign or the equals or the parentheses or the x and the minus sign or the ending parentheses. So the color part is the part that we changed, that we put numbers in. Take a minute, pat yourself on the back and say, yay, I got to this part. This is the hardest part. The rest is just algebra. I'm gonna find a fun color to use here. I'm trying to use something that's really different. We'll use dark green and see how that works. Whoa, I just lost my whiteboard. All right, let me figure out where my whiteboard went. There it is. Can you see the whiteboard now? Okay, I just want to make sure we're back on that screen. So in solving this, there's really only a couple steps. The worst thing that can happen is you may have a double negative, which happened in this case. What happens with the double negative? What do double negatives become?
Plus.
Plus. So
Positive.
first thing I do is change that to a plus. Then I just distribute through. So I have y minus 6 equals, what's 2 times x?
2x,
2x,
2x. And then 2 times 1,
2.
2. And then I have one more step. What do I have to do to get y by itself?
add 6 on both sides.
Perfect. And I get y equals 2x plus
8.
8. That is the slope-intercept form. So we took the point-slope form and turned it into slope-intercept. Why do we do that? Because point-slope form is pretty much useless. When you're looking, this is an equation of a line. But this equation would not help you much when it came to graphing or even entering it in your calculator. It's just, it would be a hard equation to use. Y equals 2x plus 8. I now know the y-intercept. Notice the slope is the same in both. That shouldn't change. It's 2. It better not change. But now I can actually pull the y-intercept out. And there is another way to do this. And some of you may be doing that way. And if you're getting the right answer, it's fine. Some of you use y equals mx plus b and solve for b. That works. Questions on this one before I stop my share and stop my recording? Let's stop that.
How do we get the recording?